Hey guys, welcome back to Table Torque. In this video, I'm going to discuss how to get crazy strong in the hook and also comparing the matches between Ivan and Morozov against Alizhan. It's one of the oldest and original techniques in the sport. If you ask me who my favorite hook puller is, I would always choose Ivan Matyushenko. He is the most knowledgeable and technical when it comes to hook. If hooking a top roller is an art, then he is the Picasso of it. We'll go deeper into this in the video, but first of all, you may have heard people say the bicep is not really needed in arm wrestling, that it's useless and all. I would say it's not true. The bicep is important in arm wrestling. Just because it's not the most important muscle doesn't mean it's not important at all. The bicep comes into play especially in defense, more than in offense. Being on the offensive isn't always your choice, so you need to have strong biceps to hold your opponent if they completely take your pronator away. People often say the bicep is useless in arm wrestling because the table is set laterally and you're not doing a curling motion like in the gym. But that doesn't mean the bicep has no role. In reality, the bicep is very important for keeping your arm tight and preventing it from being opened up. It stabilizes the angle, helps with back pressure, and supports both hook and top roll by keeping the hand closer to the body. The bicep itself won't win the match, but without it, you can't maintain control or resist your opponent's pressure. Okay, let's discuss. What does it take to be strong in the hook? First of all, training the hook really hurts. There was a time when my main move was the hook drag, and to get strong in the hook, you need to train in a way that puts a lot of stress on your elbow. But here's the thing, training doesn't make your elbow weak. Over time, it actually makes it stronger. You need to see it from the perspective that the muscles around your arm are just supporting elements, while what really matters is the tendons around your elbow and the skeletal structure. I'm not saying muscles don't matter, they do, but what you're really doing is making your arm strong in certain angles. Arm wrestling is all about angles, and we need to get strong in the exact angles where we are going to fight. First of all, we should talk about wrist. Your hand and wrist are the most important parts for a hook puller. It's simple. On your path, you'll definitely face a top roller. Against another hook puller, wrist still matters, but it's more about fighting for positions and angles. But against a top roller, you're fighting against their whole rotation and back pressure, and you can't resist that rotation without a strong hand and wrist. That's why you should focus on training your hand and wrist through exercises like wrist curls with a fat grip, low cupping on a multi-spinner, or using a wrist wrench. My coach used to make me do was gripping with my opponent, wrapping a resistance band over their hand, and letting them pull in the direction of their rotation while I cup it with everything I had. This builds insane cupping power. And as I always say, take the multi-spinners seriously. Wrist curls also help increase your side pressure. The forearm is the powerhouse of the arm, and if you have a very strong forearm, you'll likely have strong side pressure too. That's why I always say wrist curls are not optional. They're mandatory. Any kind of curl you do is basically elevating your arm strength. The next important thing is your arm angle. You need to work a lot on your arm power. And by that, I don't mean just going to the gym to make your muscles look harder. What I mean is making your angle as tight as possible and conditioning your elbow to resist getting ripped open. You may have seen people on the internet doing ego lifts that look like they're about to injure themselves, but honestly, ego lifting is kind of necessary in arm wrestling. Of course, you should care about your health, and I'm not saying to train with weights you literally can't move. What I'm saying is that in arm wrestling, if you overload certain critical joints or arm angles with extreme weights, then when you actually arm wrestle, your opponent's force feels lighter because your body has already adapted to much heavier pressure. The best example of this is Alizhan, who always trains with very heavy weights in the exact angles where he attacks. He does a lot of defensive holds. Defensive holds can literally make you a monster in hook. Alizhan has done this in the past with 215 kilograms on a double pulley, and in my opinion, that's one of the best pound-for-pound lifts ever. He always trains heavy, so when he comes to the table, he doesn't feel his opponent's force. His arm has already been exposed to much higher pressure laterally. It's a kind of neurological priming combined with angle-specific overload. So train with big weights, but make sure to warm up properly and only attempt your personal records once or at most twice a month. I would suggest training your biceps. Do some curls and static holds with moderately heavy weights for you. I always repeat, never injure yourself. Only do this after a proper warm-up. Single-arm preacher curls and holds are great, along with basic barbell curls. When you do this, you build a strong connection in your elbow through the bicep, especially in that defensive, fully supinated palmed-up position. Next is side pressure. I don't even need to explain how important side pressure is in arm wrestling. In a normal condition, side pressure peaks when your wrist is completely flexed, and the connection through your elbow creates that stickiness, making it harder to get opened up. That's what delivers true side pressure. Even if you don't have a hand advantage, your arm angle needs to stay tight. Now, I often see people training side pressure in an angle where the vector runs too acute. By doing this, you're not really isolating side pressure. It becomes more of a down pressure. It is side pressure in a sense, but not the correct one. The way Vitali trains, with the vector set perpendicular to the weight, is the proper way to target side pressure. That perpendicular load creates maximum tension through the elbow and helps develop true elbow integrity. Still, you need both, side pressure and down pressure. Both are crucial in an inside game. Anytime you're doing a pressing movement, down pressure plays a huge role. Even in a traditional hook, if both competitors stop in the center, the one in the palm down position can use down pressure to load everything onto the opponent's bicep. Think of it like this. If you consider the table as your working plane, side pressure is what brings your opponent toward your side. Once you reach that point, side pressure naturally shifts into down pressure, letting you continue the attack. There are different kinds of hooks: drag hook, high hook, low hook, deep hook. But in general, they all follow the same basic strength principles. If a hook gets stopped, one of the pullers usually ends up taking dominance on the hand. Some pullers have such a strong bicep that even if they don't get the dominant hook position, doesn't matter. They can still hold and fight there. And remember, dominance in the hook isn't absolute, it's relative. A low hook puller, for example, often chooses to fully commit to the bicep or to a more defensive pulling style. Take Denis Cyplenkov, for instance. He's the perfect example. He often stays on the bicep in defense. I wouldn't even say he chooses to. Sometimes against guys like Dave, it's just hard to stay offensive. There are also variations of the high hook. One type drives your fist toward the shoulder, almost like a punch. That can be used when you're super confident in your bicep chain. Ivan, honestly in my eyes, has the strongest and smartest cupping abilities in the sport. He's a pure hook specialist. Look back through history and you'll rarely find clips of Ivan getting top rolled. His match against Alizhan. They were locked in a completely neutral position. Neither of them gave the other even a small amount of pronation. So the whole battle was settled through bicep and shoulder strength. Then suddenly, Alizhan's side pressure hit. That's a crazy level. Maybe when Ivan is tired, you could try it, but doing it fresh in the early rounds? That's insane. Now compare that to Ivan's match against Morozov. At the start, they had the same position. Ivan attacked sideways. Morozov tried to hold but couldn't. Still, Morozov has insane endurance. The more the match dragged on, with fouls piling up, Morozov's defense started giving him the advantage. He even tried to top roll Ivan at one point, but as expected, it didn't work. And honestly, I think if Morozov faced this version of Alizhan, he'd lose. Alizhan's movement on the pad is so calculated and precise. He's not likely to foul in the early rounds the way Ivan sometimes does. So yeah, Alizhan will definitely be the one on offense. Morozov might manage to get a stop, like Ivan did, but it's going to be tough. What do you guys think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.